Karen Johnson Swift was born on January 25, 1967, in the quiet town of Dyersburg, Illinois. From the beginning, her life was marked by resilience and warmth. Adopted as a baby into a loving family with 4 other siblings, Karen grew up surrounded by support, laughter, and determination. Those who knew her described her as strong-willed, kind-hearted, and incredibly driven. She excelled in athletics, running track in school, and developing a passion for fitness that would follow her throughout her life. Karen wasn't just another small-town woman. She was ambitious, motivated, and compassionate, a mother, a friend, and a fighter. In her adult life, Karen became a respected personal trainer at the YMCA in Dyersburg, Tennessee, where she inspired others to push through their limits, often offering encouragement and motivation to everyone she trained. Karen married David Swift in 1989, and together they built what looked like a picture-perfect life. They had 4 children, a beautiful family that became well known in their close-knit community. But beneath the surface, not everything was as it seemed. Over the years, their marriage was marked by tension, separations, and reconciliation attempts that never seemed to last. Friends of the couple describe moments of deep affection, but also whispers of control, jealousy, and emotional distance. Karen, by 2011, had grown weary of the constant instability. She was ready to start fresh, to reclaim her independence, her confidence, and her peace. In the fall of that year, she filed for divorce again, this time determined to move on for good. The court filings were straightforward, asking for custody of her children and fair support. To most, it was simply a woman taking the next step in her life. But for Karen, that step would unknowingly lead her down a path from which she would never return. The last weeks of October 2011 painted a picture of a woman in transition. Hopeful, tired but resolved, friends noticed she had begun spending more time focusing on herself and her future. She had reconnected with old acquaintances and was looking forward to the upcoming holidays with her children. But just beneath the surface of her smile, a quiet tension remained. Those close to her later recalled that she seemed distracted, as if something was weighing on her mind. Whether it was the stress of the divorce, a lingering argument, or something else entirely, no one could be sure. What is certain, however, is that Karen Swift's story, up until this point, was that of a woman who had survived life's storms before, but this time, the storm would be unlike any she had ever faced. Her final days were ordinary in every sense, filled with errands, workouts, and caring for her children, but fate was already in motion. As Halloween weekend approached, no one in Dyersburg could have imagined that this bright, athletic mother would soon become the center of one of Tennessee's most haunting murder mysteries. Her disappearance would shake the community, and her story would echo for more than a decade, leaving behind questions that still have no answers. It was the night before Halloween, October 29, 2011, and the small town of Dyersburg, Tennessee, buzzed with celebration. Costumes, laughter, and autumn leaves filled the air as families and friends gathered for parties across town. Among them was 44-year-old Karen Swift, dressed in a sleek black Catwoman costume, confident, composed, and according to friends, carrying a faint air of distraction. She attended a Halloween gathering at the Farms Golf Club, one of the community's social highlights. Those who saw her that evening recalled her usual friendly demeanor, but something about her seemed distant, as though her thoughts were elsewhere. Throughout the night, small tensions arose, brief disagreements with other guests, subtle glances exchanged that hinted at unease, the kind of moments that seemed trivial at the time, but later take on haunting significance, sometime around midnight. Karen left the party. A friend said she mentioned her daughter wasn't feeling well and that she needed to pick her up from a nearby sleepover. The roads were quiet that night, the air heavy with mist and the glow of streetlights cutting through the fog. Karen drove her white 2004 Nissan Murano through the winding backroads of Dyer County, unaware that these would be the final hours of her life. She picked up her daughter and returned home to the Swift family residence on Willie Johnson Road, a modest house surrounded by farmland and shadowed trees. David Swift, her estranged husband, was home that night, recovering from knee surgery and reportedly asleep in the bedroom. Digital evidence later revealed a chilling timeline. At approximately 2:08 a.m., Karen's phone reconnected to the home Wi-Fi, confirming she had made it back safely. But at 4:38 a.m., the connection dropped for the last time. That was the final digital trace of Karen Swift alive. By sunrise, her vehicle was found abandoned on Millsfield Highway, less than a mile from her home. The driver's side window was partially down. Inside, police discovered her Halloween costume neatly folded in the back seat, but her purse, phone, and personal items were missing. The front left tire had been punctured, not by accident, but deliberately. Investigators later noted a screw placed cleanly into the tread, as if to stage a breakdown. Neighbors reported seeing nothing unusual, no sounds of struggle, no cars speeding by in the night. Karen seemed to have simply vanished. Her family awoke the next morning to confusion and panic. Calls to her phone went unanswered, messages unreturned. Within hours, police began a search that would stretch across fields, rivers, and wooded backroads. But even in those early hours, whispers spread across town. Something about the scene didn't feel right. This wasn't a random disappearance. The flat tire, the missing purse, the eerily untouched car. It all felt too calculated. As investigators retraced her final steps, one question lingered over Dyersburg like the thick Halloween fog. What really happened to Karen Swift between 2 a.m. and sunrise? As the sun rose over Dyersburg on October 30th, 2011, panic began to ripple through the quiet Tennessee town. The Swift family awoke to find Karen missing, her car abandoned less than a mile from home. Within hours, the Dyer County Sheriff's Department launched a full-scale search operation. Officers cordoned off the area around Millsfield Highway, while helicopters scanned the farmlands and dense tree lines that bordered the countryside. Volunteers gathered in small groups, combing through ditches, creeks, and overgrown fields. Missing person posters were printed, and by evening Karen's face was everywhere. Her bright smile now a haunting reminder of uncertainty. For days, search teams scoured the area, hoping for a sign, a clue, anything. But the landscape seemed to hold its secrets tightly. Every lead fizzled into silence. The early investigation quickly focused on those closest to Karen. Detectives questioned her estranged husband, David Swift, who maintained that he had been asleep when she returned home and woke to find her gone. He claimed she must have left early that morning for a run or to meet someone. But investigators were skeptical. The couple's marriage had been strained for months, and Karen had recently filed for divorce. Court documents revealed disputes over custody and finances, potential motives that could not be ignored. Forensic teams examined the Swift home, searching for signs of a struggle. They found nothing conclusive, but several details stood out. The faint odor of bleach near the garage, bottles of cleaning solution stacked outside, and a freshly mopped floor. Detectives photographed everything, unsure which detail might later prove significant. Weeks passed, with no progress. The community remained on edge, holding vigils and prayer circles as hope began to fade. Then on December 10th, 2011, 42 days after her disappearance, a shocking discovery shattered the uneasy calm. A caretaker clearing brush near Bledsoe Cemetery, just 3 miles from Karen's home, noticed something unusual under a tangle of vines. What at first looked like discarded clothing revealed upon closer inspection the remains of a woman's body. The area was immediately sealed off as forensic units arrived. Dental records confirmed what many had feared. The body was Karen Swift. The autopsy revealed Karen had died from blunt force trauma to the head and possible strangulation. Her body showed no signs of defensive wounds, suggesting she may have been caught off guard. The medical examiner estimated she had been killed the night she disappeared. Investigators scoured the scene but found little physical evidence. The remote wooded location had been carefully chosen, away from traffic and hidden by natural cover. To make matters worse, The 6 weeks of exposure to the elements had compromised much of the forensic material that might have identified her killer. The discovery marked a turning point. The missing person case had become a homicide investigation. But even with a body, detectives were no closer to finding answers. Dyersburg was gripped by fear and speculation as theories spread through the town like wildfire. The woman who had once trained neighbors, cheered at her children's games, and brought positivity into every room, had been silenced, and the question of who did it would haunt Tennessee for years to come. As the investigation into Karen Swift's murder intensified, suspicion quickly turned toward the person closest to her, her estranged husband, David Swift. In almost every missing person case, investigators begin with the spouse, and in this instance, the signs pointed toward tension, resentment, and a history of emotional volatility. Friends of the couple told police that the marriage had been unraveling for years. Karen had allegedly told confidants she felt controlled and watched. Others described David as jealous, prone to anger, and unwilling to accept the end of their relationship. To law enforcement, the timing was too perfect. A looming divorce, a home shared by the victim and the primary suspect, and an unexplained disappearance that began and ended within a few miles of the Swift residence. Detectives obtained search warrants and combed through the property multiple times. They noted inconsistencies in David's timeline and statements, but without physical evidence, the case remained fragile. No DNA, no fingerprints, and no direct forensic link tied him to Karen's death. Despite this, suspicion lingered like a shadow over the Swift household. Meanwhile, the court of public opinion had already formed its own verdict. Local gossip and social media fueled speculation that David was the killer, a narrative too compelling for many to ignore. But law enforcement knew better. A hunch, no matter how strong, would never hold up in court. As months passed, alternative theories began to surface, each one stranger and more uncertain than the last. One involved a mysterious man reportedly seen near Bledsoe Cemetery with a metal detector just days before Karen's body was discovered. Another claimed that Karen had been involved in a secret social circle within the Dyersburg community, a world of private gatherings and quiet scandals that might have led her into danger. These claims, though never substantiated, added layers of intrigue to an already complex investigation. Private investigators hired by the family even uncovered details suggesting multiple people could have been involved. That Karen might have known her killer personally and trusted them enough to stop that night. The problem was that every lead seemed to collapse under scrutiny. Witnesses contradicted themselves. Alibis couldn't be verified, and physical evidence was scarce or degraded. Detectives began to wonder if someone had planned the perfect crime, a killing executed in silence, followed by a cleanup meticulous enough to erase nearly every trace. The only clues left behind were circumstantial: the slashed tire, the smell of bleach, and the eerie absence of noise in the hours she disappeared. Years would pass before David Swift was finally indicted for Karen's murder, more than a decade after the crime. Prosecutors built their case on motive, opportunity, and circumstantial patterns. But in court, David maintained his innocence, arguing that he was asleep and physically incapable of committing the crime due to knee surgery. The jury would later find him not guilty, leaving the community divided, the family devastated, and the truth still hidden in the fog of uncertainty. In the end, what began as a simple marital dispute had spiraled into one of Tennessee's most perplexing unsolved murders, a case where every theory made sense, and yet none could be proven. The years following Karen Swift's death were marked by silence, frustration, and heartbreak. The once peaceful town of Dyersburg could never return to normal. Her family, left shattered, continued to live under the weight of questions that time refused to answer. Karen's children grew up without their mother, haunted by the reality that her killer had never truly been brought to justice. Candlelight vigils became a yearly ritual, flickering flames in the autumn chill, faces illuminated by grief and determination. Each year, on the anniversary of her disappearance, the community gathered to speak her name, to remind the world that her story had not been forgotten. But behind the prayers and tears was a lingering truth that haunted everyone who knew her. Karen's murder was not just a tragedy, but a wound in the fabric of their town, a scar that refused to fade. Detectives never stopped investigating. Evidence boxes filled with reports, photographs, and forensic notes sat waiting in the Dyer County evidence room, silent witnesses to a story that refused to close. Over time, technological advancements brought hope. New DNA testing methods, digital forensics, and behavioral profiling gave investigators fresh tools to re-examine the case. But even as the years passed, no definitive breakthrough emerged. The original suspects remained under scrutiny, and yet there was no physical proof, no clear timeline, no single piece of evidence strong enough to unravel the truth. For every step forward, new questions emerged. Was Karen targeted by someone she knew? Did she stumble upon something she shouldn't have? Or was her death the result of a moment of rage, buried beneath years of secrecy? In 2022, more than a decade after the murder, the case saw renewed attention when a grand jury finally indicted David Swift for Karen's death. The arrest brought both relief and disbelief, a moment that felt like closure but wasn't. When the trial began, prosecutors presented a case built on years of suspicion and circumstantial evidence. They argued that jealousy, divorce, and resentment had culminated in violence. But the defense countered every claim, painting a picture of a flawed investigation built on assumption rather than proof. In the end, the jury found David Swift not guilty, citing lack of physical evidence. The verdict left the courtroom silent. Some wept in anger, others in exhaustion. After years of waiting, the truth was still out of reach. Today, Karen's case remains unsolved, a chilling reminder that justice doesn't always arrive, and some stories never find their ending. Her name has become synonymous with unanswered questions, the kind that echo long after the news fades. Yet for those who loved her, Karen's legacy is not one of tragedy, but of resilience. Her story continues to drive awareness for missing and murdered women across Tennessee and beyond. The Halloween murder of Karen Swift is more than a cold case. It's a haunting mystery that continues to whisper from the shadows of rural Tennessee, reminding us that behind every headline lies a human life, and behind every mystery a family still waiting for truth.